Hey guys, welcome back to my channel for another video. If you're new here, my name is Paige .sechler. Obviously, you've stumbled across today's video, and today is a Faith Friday video. Every Friday, I upload a faith-related video, whether it is me sitting down. Typically, it's a nice coffee talk, relaxing video. Sometimes it is a little bit more in-depth and elaborate, but for the most part, we do a lot of coffee talks, and it's just pretty short, sweet, to the point, and it's just my way of spreading the word of God. So that is what you have hopped on here for today. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe down below to see my weekly content. And yeah, without further ado, we're just gonna get into the video. So today's video is one that I have been really working on applying in my everyday life. If you aren't familiar with my channel, or if you're new here, I recently just got married back in September of 2019. So this is something that I have really been working to apply in my life and my relationship. That's my dog and her pig. Anyway, I'm sorry if you hear that jingling, it's my dog's collar. If you hear her making noises, she is just living it up, playing with her toys. So anyway, today's video is how to be a Christian wife. And this is something that a lot of the points that I have are a little bit controversial, if I would say. Meaning that a lot of it isn't how women want to be seen or treated these days, and that is just the worldly way of doing things. The points that I have are from the Bible, what I've researched, what I've prayed on, what God has put on my heart about how to be a Christian wife. So I'm not going to ramble too much. We are just going to go into what I have to talk about. Okay, so the very first point is to pray, and not only pray with your spouse, but pray for your spouse. If they are doing something that you feel is ungodly or sinning, or something that you just don't think is a good habit, don't try to force them to change. Pray, and if God wants them to change, God will put it on their heart to change. And I think it's important to pray with your spouse. That way you connect on a deeper level, and you then are just becoming one. When you pray together, it's really the only way to pray for them and to pray together. It's the only way that you're ever going to make a change, especially if it's in your relationship. If you're praying for change in the relationship, it's important to pray to God and ask for change, because that's the only person that can really change anything is God. He is the ruler, creator, controller of the entire world. So the only way to actually change anything is to go through God. Okay, my next point is that you and your spouse need to become one. So the Bible verse we're going to reference is Matthew 19 verses 4 through 6. Haven't you read, he replied, that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female? He said, for this reason man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no man separate. I think that it is important, and what that verse is saying is that it's important to become one, not only physically, not, you know, in the act of marriage, but it's important to spiritually become one. When one is going through a suffering season, the other needs to be right there with them. And when one is going through a joyous season and joyous occasions, the other, your spouse, needs to be right there with you. And I think it's important to become one with your spouse and go through everything that they go through in life together. And what I've learned so far too, also, so Max and I lived together before we got married. And so we've lived together over a year now, and it's easy to get into the roommate state of mind. And I'll notice Max and I do this occasionally. We call them bad habits. Like, we are just getting into our own routine. We come home from work, we shower, we sit on the couch, we watch TV, we go to bed, Like, we don't do anything affectionate for each other. We don't do anything showing that we are in a relationship. It's just almost like we're just like passerbyers. Like, we aren't like communicating on a deeper level. We aren't connecting on that deeper level. And once you become one with your husband, you have that open door, that open wave of connection that you can learn about each other, that you just can freely explain and talk, and whether it's physical, spiritually, mentally, anything, like, you have that open door of communication. So on that same topic of having that open communication line, I think it is important to make sure that you're setting aside time to communicate with your husband, to talk to your husband, to listen to what he has to say. For men, it's not as easy as it is for women to just sit down and be like, hey, you know, you've been annoying me with this, you're driving me crazy with this, and I can't stand when you do this. It's not that easy for guys to just blurt that out into regular conversation, because men just aren't wired the same as women, and that's just simple fact. And so it's important to make time to sit down with your husband and just make sure, see how they're doing. Ask how they are, you know, physically. How are you liking work? Are you tired? Is it tiring on your body? Do you need a back rub? How are you mentally? Like, are you doing okay? Are you struggling? Are you suffering? Because this will help tie you into becoming one, because what he's going through, you should be going through as well. It's important then you can also understand what you can be doing for them. It's important to want to please your husband, and this is something where it gets a little bit more controversial in the world, but the Bible says that a woman is made to serve their husband, to please their husband. And I think it's important that the best way that a woman can please and satisfy and take care of their husband is to understand their wants and their needs and just what they want and expect out of us. So I think the best way to do that is to have that open communication line. And in this time, I'm making it sound like we just need to sit down and listen to them. It's a two-way street. In this time where you guys are talking, it shouldn't be, you know, a buildup of all these big things. If you do this more often than not, then these little things that add up to big things can come out, and it's easier to fix rather than it exploding in your face and you're like, what the heck just happened? So have that open communication line, learn about each other, learn about each other's likes and dislikes, and that again ties back into you becoming one, because now not only are you going through the seasons of happiness and suffering and concern and anxiety together, but you are also understanding what you can do for each other to make life better, easier, godly. I don't know what the word I want to use is, but you know what I mean. Next point would be, which this again is a little more of a touchy subject, but I think it's important to respect our husbands. But the Bible tells us that it is important to respect our husbands. And actually I've got Bible reference to back this one up, so let me pull it up, and I'm going to be looking at Ephesians chapter 5 verse 33. However, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. Right there it says in the Bible that women are to respect their husbands. We are to listen to them. We are to do what is respectable for them. And it's something, again, where men are just wired differently than women. Men almost require a different level of respect than women do. They don't need it. Men, in different ways, men desire respect as a woman might desire love or physical touch. Like, that is just something that to a man, it is something about, I don't even want to say his ego, but men just demand a certain level of respect. And when a wife can submit and give that to her husband, that is what God is looking for us to do. That's what we were put on this earth to do, was to be a partner, to respect and assist and obey our spouse, our husband. They're supposed to be the leader. So how are they supposed to lead us if we don't respect them? Okay, the next one I actually saw on another YouTube video where somebody made like points on it, like how to be a Christian wife, is where I got this point from, and it totally hit home. And it is, go to your husband first. It is, nothing is more, for lack of a better term, a slap in the face than when you're at a family function and, you know, you're hanging out with grandma, mother-in-law, grandma-in-law, da-da-da-da-da. All the girls are over here and you hear grandma say, oh yeah, Max told me about this, da-da-da-da. What do you think? And you just like kind of laugh and play along like, oh yeah, I knew all about it. But inside you're like, I had no idea that this was going on, or that this happened, or that happened. And it's like one of those things where like your heart just shatters a little, because it almost makes you feel less important. Like you weren't important enough for them to tell you anything first. And this again goes back to that verse we referenced where you're becoming one with your significant other. And when you are one, you go through things together. You experience happiness, sadness, anxiety. Everything needs to be together and needs to be communicated first. You married that person, so that person needs to be your first priority when it comes to telling any news to, whether it's good or bad. This is something that especially applies to women for their husbands, and it is to give them their space. Yeah, sister, I said it. I know it's hard. Trust me, I love to smother Max in all the affection that he probably doesn't want. I love to, like when we're home, I want to have that time spent together. But a man needs his own time. And I don't want to say they need their own time. They need their own time and they need their own freedom. If they want to go out to the bar or go out to dinner with their friends, you should trust them enough to allow them to do that. And if you don't trust them, well, that's a whole different problem. But you should trust them. If you're married, that means you should have trust in them, and you should have faith that they're going to do the right thing no matter what situation presents itself. Another thing is to not bombard them with your own emotions right away. We are always talking about our emotions, and men aren't. Men typically keep a lot of it inside just because they don't really see the point in sharing their emotions, where women, we cannot shut up. It's just what it is. It's in our nature. We like to talk, and that's okay. But it's important to let a man come home and unwind from whatever has happened, whether he was working or spending time with friends or family or whatever it may be. Give them time to unwind a little before you bombard them with all your own thoughts and emotions and feelings first. And another thing is, when you're giving them their freedom, you need to have trust. That is, I mean, it says it all through the Bible that you need to trust your spouse, that your spouse is, you know, the same person as you, that you guys need to trust each other. I personally have never really been much of the jealous type, only because Max has never given me much of a reason to ever be jealous. We just have established this trust and communication within each other that it's become something that freedom is just something that is, I don't want to say it's earned, but it's given because it's never been destroyed or ruined. That being said, in your marriage, say you are struggling because your husband is not giving you the time that you feel like you deserve when he comes home. You know, he comes home from work and he's like, hey, I'm going to go to the gym with my friends, then we're going to go to the bar after, and you're at home with your kids all day. I think it's important to make sure that they know that family time needs to come before friend time. That is also something very important to kind of just disclaim in the relationship. Another point that I think that is very important is that it's important to adjust and grow with your spouse, because you know, you are spending a lifetime together. That's what you've committed to as marriage, and I don't think people realize how much you actually change until you're looking back on it. And I mean, Max and I have dated since we were 14 years old, and now we're going on, you know, we're going to be 22 this year. And it's just crazy to see how much has actually changed in our lives. And so I mean, that's just what, 7 years or 8 years we've spent together. Like, think when we're like 50 years old, how much time will have actually changed. So if Max all of a sudden decides that his hobby is hiking, you know, I would try hiking with him. I think it's important to adjust and accommodate and be interested, even if you're not actually interested, just supportive of what your spouse's interests are. It's just important to grow together rather than apart. That's when people end up getting divorced and stuff. When you stop caring and learning about what your spouse is interested in. That, and also my next point, which is physical touch. And that's also another thing that is very important in a relationship, because the person you marry is the only person that can actually give you physical touch. That is what, you know, that's the only person in the whole entire world that can do that for you. So it's important that you don't deprive them of that, but also in that sense, you don't want to pressure or guilt anyone into anything. You don't want to pressure them. It should just be something that you're married. You guys are, you know, one, and that is just something that is special between the two of you. We're actually on the last point, and that is to not compare your spouse to anybody else. That is a very degrading feeling if you have ever had that happen. Like, you don't want to like come home from work and be like, honey, like, you didn't do the dishes. Well, like, Janice down the street says every time she comes home from work, her husband has the dishes already done and washed and put away. Like, okay, that's a very like minor example, but like when you compare him to another spouse, it is like a slap in the face, and it's also a sign of disrespect, which again we talked about earlier. And you just don't want to make your husband feel like less than what he is, because he does work hard and in ways that we probably don't even recognize or see or understand. And it's just very demeaning talking to somebody that way. And this honestly applies to more than just your husband, to your kids, to your mother, to your father, to your grandmother, to your sister, to anybody. Like, just comparing them isn't right. It's not, it gets you nowhere other than getting more people upset and frustrated, because each person is their own individual. And once you stop comparing them to others and start to respect and appreciate them for what they are, you really have a whole new look into what, you know, what they're capable of and what they do for us that we don't typically see. Alright guys, so that is all for this week's video. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and please subscribe down below, and you will see that I upload videos every Monday and then a faith video every Friday. And yeah, I will see you guys next week. Bye. Now, I'm the noisy one that you hear behind the scenes all the time. Mom's cameraman, that's me.